Now what do you do?
All right, now we're live.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for attending tonight's Board of Health meeting, January 22nd, 2025. We will call this meeting to order. First thing, roll call.
Tom Pickner here.
Colleen Staponi here.
Jack McClellan here.
Alan Greenberg here. Thank you. We'll move on to good and welfare for the public. Anyone in the audience or at home have anything they would like to speak about? All right, thank you. We'll move on to new business. 50 Uxbridge Road, variance review and approval.
All right, Mr. Chairman, we do have Tom Ryan, the Board of Health Engineer, and also Margaret Bacon, the engineer for the applicant. Both are online.
Very good. All right, Margaret, you're up.
Okay, Margaret Bacon, Civil Site Engineering, and I'm here representing my client Albert Valley for a proposed tight tank at 50 Uxbridge Road. Are you familiar with the site at all?
I can't say that I am. Any
Yeah,
other members?
No, I'm not.
Yeah, it's right across from where they're doing all the development up on the hill with all the rock.
Okay,
Yeah, it's right across the street. It's an existing 2-bedroom house that is in need of a septic upgrade, and the only thing that would really fit is a tight tank out in the front. And the two lots towards the center of town, right adjacent to it, we just put in tight tanks there within the last 2 years. And so with this one, because of the wells and the Lake Nipmunk in the back, there's just no other option but a 2,500 gallon tight tank. And even the tight tank, I can't keep I'm within the 50-foot well radius. So I had to notify all the abutters.
Just to note, the inside the 50-foot radius is only for the owner's well themselves, not.
The audio is kind of low.
yeah, Tom, speak up a little, please.
The audio is kind of low, Tom.
Yes, can you hear me now?
It sounds a little better.
Maybe because my mic is up further.
There we go.
All right. So the point I wanted to make is the well in question is their own well that's within the 50-foot setback, not any of the abutters' wells. So all the abutters' wells meet the 50 feet, just the owner themselves, but this is a variance.
Are you okay with this, Tom Ryder?
Yes, so I mean, there's very limited what they can do on the site. It is surrounded by other private wells, so they met all the setbacks that they could meet. So a tight tank is the option that they have to use. So
Yeah, and one other thing too is the ledge. A lot of ledge out there. I couldn't dig a hole deeper than 2 feet.
We're gonna get you a bigger shovel.
Ugh, the hammer, the hammer.
There you go, rock in. So what is, I didn't bring my glasses, so what is the distance from the tight tank to the homeowner's existing well proposed?
27 feet.
Okay. All right, so Tom Ryder, your recommendation is this is acceptable?
yes, so I could probably condition it that they do some pressure testing, low pressure testing to make sure that, or just make sure everything is tight tank. So something they would have to certify anyways.
Any further discussion from anyone on this topic?
I just had a question about the paperwork. I was a little confused. I know at that last meeting, we were supposed to review this. We were given a packet. And I know we have some other paperwork that was just given to us tonight. I'm trying to line up what I'm seeing, some inconsistencies.
Okay, please.
Well, so in the packet we got tonight, we have an application for disposal system construction permit for Form 1A.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that wasn't part of the packet from the last meeting. Not that that matters per se, but, and the paperwork for the actual Form 9A doesn't seem to be complete on this current packet, like it was on the first packet.
Because it's a variance, it's not gonna be a local upgrade.
So it's a variance.
Correct.
Oh, so it changed,
It changed
it,
direction.
I got it.
Very good. Does that clear that up?
Yes. Yep, because I was thinking local upgrade versus variance.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right. If we're all good, we'll have a motion.
I'll make the motion to accept the variance upgrade as approved by Tom Ryder, 50 Uxbridge Road.
All right, I'll step down. Second motion. All in favor?
Tom, aye?
Alan, aye. All right, Margaret, you're all set.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Margaret.
Bye.
Thank you, Tom Ryder.
No problem.
All right, now we will move on to private well regulations. I'm really thrilled to get back in touch with these. It has been a while, so why don't we, I recommend that we kind of go back to page 1 and work our way through, because I believe we left off kind of halfway to 3/4, and that was quite a while ago. Unless anybody has another suggestion.
I don't even remember where we left off.
Okay.
Well, so I took a lot of the comments and I started incorporating and I cleaned up. You know, because I put a lot of notes in there that just were just notes to make sense. So what I did was in red, I kind of highlighted a change. Or I highlighted in red and I drew a line through it. And then I put a little note to the side. You can see it says Thomas Ryder, you know, here for alterations now includes geothermal modifications. So that's what I did. I kind of put notes along the document. So I want to say that it's like very close to being finished up. I think there's some just rereading and just making sure that we know, kind of do a little test on what the outcomes would be. And perhaps you know, getting a summary ready for the paper, and as well as probably talking with you know, the residents, the real estate, Title V inspectors, and so on. You know, what the impacts are, what the changes are. It doesn't. I don't think it produces a lot of changes, but it just want to make sure that they're aware of you know, of the items in the code.
Okay, do we want to start and just kind of go through at whatever speed is required, section 1, 2, and just move along?
That sounds good.
All right, so everybody, why don't we start at section 1? I believe it's page 5.
Yep.
All right, so section 1, purpose and authority. General statement as to, you know, why the regulations exist and who is responsible.
Yes, boilerplate.
Everybody good with section 1?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
All right, section 2, again, basic definitions to explain the different sections and, you know, if anybody needs to refer back to them, we can see that Tom Ryder, in 2.2 alteration, he included geothermal modifications. Moving down a little further, the definition for a geothermal well was added. A little further, the definition for the maximum feasible compliance.
Yeah, so that will have an impact on basically when variances are requested from the code. And so we probably want to talk about further on how the process would be, such as those who are looking for you know, offsets, like if they want to install a well within 50 feet of a septic tank, for example. So under Title V, you're not installing the septic tank, you're installing the well now. So maximum feasible compliance is like, there's going to be a test on, all right, what alternatives do they have to use? So that is something we need to consider as we go through the document on how to, when it would not be approved and when it could be approved.
Okay. Very good.
Are you guys hearing me
Everybody
okay? Are you all hearing me okay, or?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
All right, so moving along, we have the updated definition to separate semi-private water supply. This is under 2.11 private well.
Actually, I redlined that in error. That was a note. 'Cause we never had a semi-public well in our previous regulation, but I removed that from, I think I had in the notes. That was probably part of the notes. So updated the private well regulation and then created a semi-public water supply definition.
Right. I see that down further.
2.15.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I see what you did there. Thank you.
Uh, 218 was updated, I believe. Under Mass General laws, in the code, I didn't put the regulations in this section, but it used to be under the DCR's jurisdiction for the wells drillers. It's now under DEP's jurisdiction, so it changed the code, the regulations, and I think the section of the law too.
Okay, very good. All right, so now we're moving on to section 3.0, requirements for private wells, please.
So in this section, it's what I was hearing from the board in the past was just to have like an alternatives analysis on the concerns about putting in one well that serves multiple, like a condominium or on different properties. So I put a little section, I put a section in there to, you know, kind of describe that, and you guys will have to read through it to make sure it makes sense to you. Because I was going based upon conversations that we've had in the past. And I kind of looked at Ashland had a section in their code regarding semi-public water supplies as well. I didn't copy theirs, but Ashland was the only other town that I could see that they actually had a separated semi-public water supply. There may be a few, but I took a look at a bunch of them, and that's the only one I found.
Would that cover the ADUs also?
No, so I'm thinking for a lot. But if you have like a condominium complex, so now it's kind of, but it's still under 26 units. It still would be a private well without this code. In this case, we're pushing it and bringing it into a semi-public water supply. Or a well that potentially could serve two different properties.
Do you think with the ADUs coming on board that we should have a provision that addresses them specifically, or can we just incorporate something into the well regulations?
Yeah, I guess that could, you know, I guess that could include ADUs. You know, if there's one lot and has an ADU on the property that's serving both. I mean, is an ADU actually, I mean, it's not a condominium, though, right? So, because it's your own family.
You know, or even they're using, you know, the existing structure, the basements. Now, there was a meeting today, Paul Halfman went through a bunch of the various and sundry things that we're gonna have to address because of the passing of the ADUs. And one was about finishing basements and using them as, or calling them ADUs.
Right.
So I didn't know if we should have some sort of provision in the well regulations for that specifically, or would we consider it one well serving, you know, two parcels or two units?
Yeah. So the major reason why I'm thinking for this section of the code is to make sure that first, everybody's aware of the well, the location, and, you know, the testing. And then if there's a transfer of title, make sure that somehow we figure a way to get them to submit either on a regular basis or during the transfer of title of the well analysis. So I think that's part of the thought. The other thought is just to make sure there's some sort of alternative analysis to make sure that we're the engineer is telling us what the best case scenario is, and that we don't have like 10 wells on a property and they can't put a septic system, or one well that's not meeting the required, you know, the needs, either quantity or quality of all the property owners. So that is that is what I thought that's what we were trying to address. I'm not sure what the impact of the ADUs would be. I didn't think about that at the time. So
I don't think the law wasn't in existence when we started on this.
yeah, right.
We were starting to see, we saw one small development of duplex or triplex style homes going up in Mendon, and that was sort of why we addressed this as a semi-private water supply.
Yep.
It was the concern over who had control and responsibility of the water source.
Right.
So the ADUs are something kind of new on the scene. That if we can catch that with rewriting the well regulations as best as possible, because as Colleen said, the rules are kind of fluid and everybody's really scrambling to try to figure out what it all means. That would be good, but you're correct, Tom. The main reason we came up with the category and looked at other towns and how they were addressing it was because of the developments that we were starting to see, or maybe before the planning board, when we started this process to update the well regs. ADUs did not exist at the time.
Right. Right.
So I feel this covers that issue. The ADUs are probably gonna be in their own category. And, you know, I don't know exactly how pinpointed we can get that particular section at the time. That's probably gonna be a section of the well regs that, as we learn more, we may have to just tweak that section. Not go through the whole process like we are now.
My concern is an existing property with existing well. And then they go and, you know, they construct an ADU. There should be something in the regulations that prior to that, you know, there should be some sort of quantity or quality analysis done on the existing wells. Before it can support that second unit.
Yeah, very similar to the septic system, right?
Right,
Every bedroom is 110 gallons.
right, that's my concern.
So would that come into play, and again, being stupid, certificate of occupancy for this ADU? Would they need a certificate of occupancy? So they would go, you need to, because the Board of Health would sign off on that, and without the septic or the water results, we wouldn't sign off on it.
No, I know, but I think within our well regulations that, you know, because again, there's an existing well
That was-
on the property. And
Gotcha.
now you're gonna put a second unit on that property. We should maybe look at or discuss some sort of quantity or quality testing prior to the new unit tying into or drawing from that well. That's my concern.
Makes sense. Yeah, you have a modification, major modification.
And maybe it could fall underneath that modification section, Tom, I don't know, I'll leave that up to, you know, up to you as far as where that should fall. Or what part of the regulation.
Yeah, it may have to start with the definitions and then reworded somewhere in the requirements
Mhm.
for private wells, but I think, you know, I spent some time writing it up, but then I think our job should be to go through these changes and say, okay, what will happen when someone wants to do an ADU? What is the process? Does this clearly define the process that they would have to go through without confusion? And they're gonna, you know, someone's gonna be confused on something eventually.
Yeah.
You know, who submits what at what time and who pays for what, whatever it may be, or you know, so it needs to be clear enough that they know they go to the building department and the building department says, okay, you need to make sure the Board of Health is satisfied with the well quality and quantity. And that would be a permit process. And so, and they're gonna get confused. So we just need to make sure that it's clear enough, and then we can tell the public afterwards, after this is adopted, you know, what the changes are and how to go through the process smoothly.
From a definition standpoint, are we saying that a semi-public water supply is the same as a private well? Or are we defining them as being different?
We are defining them.
Yes,
They have different criteria, right, Tom?
yeah,
Okay.
so yeah, that probably needs to be cleaned up a little bit, but it's the in between where I should have said, like, I should have written that multiple that serves multiple services that do not meet the Department of Environmental Protection's drinking water regulations.
I was just thinking in terms of the title of that section, if we actually have two different things here, we're actually talking about requirements for private wells and semi-public.
Yeah,
So,
so like
right.
more, so we would say more than one dwelling or more than one dwelling unit.
Yes.
I mean, a semi-private well is a private well. but it's a private well that services more than one dwelling.
Well,
Yeah.
so is a semi
Or,
water supply the same as a semi public well?
Well, it's not a
So-
public.
right, it's not a public, because it doesn't meet the definition of a public, but I think I wanted to add that not only it serves more than one dwelling, but maybe it's not on the building lot that's served, that serves the facility.
Okay, but here we are using the word semi-public.
Right, so, and I'm seeing on different versions, we've used the term semi-public water supply and we've used semi-public well. Is a semi-public water supply the same as a semi-public well?
Yes, I try to fix those, Tom. Because I had seen semi-public wells in here, so I tried to adjust it to say semi-public water supply, so I
Okay,
could have missed a few.
no, it's okay. I was thinking from a title perspective, we should, maybe the title of that section, try to,
Mm-hmm.
Keep it the
because
same, yeah.
it's private, we're,
Okay, so if we, to your point, if we 3.0 requirements for private wells and semi-public
semi-public.
water
Water supply.
supplies. All right, so we'll add that.
Unless we wanted to create, unless there was enough differentiations where you created a separate section. But I don't know if it matters. Maybe it's better to keep it all in one.
Yeah, I didn't want to because I thought I would, because I'm using the older document and if they had a reference to a section, I was trying to cross-reference, make sure those didn't change.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
adding the definitions wasn't a problem, but adding sections beyond section 3 might be, so. Okay. All right, I think there's a couple, I think the definition I gotta clean up a little bit more and take a look at adding the ADU information in there. Okay.
Tom, do you think that there should be, the well casing should be, so many inches or feet, above grade?
I believe 18 inches is the standard minimum. But isn't it, I don't remember seeing that in here, construction.
I remember that somewhere because there was some discussion that the top of the wellhead shouldn't be like in a pit.
Right.
I didn't see it, but maybe I missed it, only because we just had an issue with that house that was being sold, remember?
Yeah,
Jack?
yeah.
It was an old house, and of course, back then, there probably wasn't regulations, and the woman questioned that.
Yeah, I
because it
remember
was-
that,
it was
having that
flush.
discussion. Yeah,
with-
I know of one that's actually in like a concrete pit
Mhm.
with a big cover. So if that pit were to fill up with water,
I believe that,
it would be above the head.
I believe that's 5.3, section C, the well casing shall be covered with the sanitary well seal casing shall extend a minimum 24 inches above the highest known flood levels or 18 inches above the ground surface in areas which will not subject to flooding.
Good
Thank
job.
you, Jack.
Here we go.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay, so we'll move on to 3.2 permit requirements.
I think I added that heading in there. I think that was standard discussion that we had in the past.
Would anybody take the word construction by itself and use it differently? They saw it. It's in, we have the word construction within the
Mhm.
confines of private well regulations.
Yeah.
But would somebody say, what do you mean by construction?
I was thinking the same thing.
Right, should we be specific and say well construction?
What,
Or we talk, somebody say, well,
Yeah, I
you say
started the house.
construction,
Right, or
I mean, I see what you're saying.
started,
or is that being too,
so is that for the construction of the house or the construction of the well? Three point,
Um, All right, I'm gonna say, I think the intentions probably were for the well, but I can also see a need for, like, if they're building the house. But I think ultimately we want to make sure that we have control of the well's quantity and quality, so if, if they constructed the house in the wrong location and the only other location they have to put it is that, near the septic system, then sorry.
so maybe
Right.
we ought to add well construction has been.
well, if we read down a little further, I think that would cover it.
it does say well in those, in that description. So maybe that's,
And
Sufficient.
based on the process, you really don't get a building permit till you drill your well and you get results back from your well.
Mhm.
So you can't get the building permit to build the structure because of the order that you have to do things. So we're probably covered there now. They can clear the land, they can put the driveway in, but they really can't construct the dwelling until they get the results from the well. Although I've seen it done the other way.
Well, and I was gonna say, I don't believe that that's provision under the building code, that, I mean, at time of occupancy in the potable water.
Well, I mean, I did do my house a long time ago, but I couldn't get a building permit till I gave them my well results.
Yeah, I mean, I know, I'm familiar with that, but I'm not sure that it's actually,
All right, so do we want to add the word well? Unless well construction has begun?
well, we could, I mean, like I said, it is specified now down in the breakdown. Whereas initially it was, that's kind of a general description, and it does say well further. Oh, but,
No, we can add that.
so,
You know, I mean, they could have started drilling the well before the 12 months was up, but not have finalize the drilling and the results.
Yep.
Yeah.
So why don't we just, we'll add the word well in front of the word construction.
yep,
Okay, yep, added, yep.
All right, moving along. We're down to 3.4.
Conditioning the permit. Because we're still in section, requirements for private wells. So I think I put a lot of theme in here regarding deed notifications and stuff like that. So I think you'll see throughout the sections that, those who require a, treatment system, through the permit process, will need to put a deed notification, for what it's treating. So I added that section in there regarding, it was just an addition to the investigation of violations, but that may or may not fit. Just let me know if you think that doesn't fit there. But it's there, it's in other locations too.
how is 3.5 supposed to read? Do we go to 3.5 yet?
We're on 3.5 right now.
Yeah, so if the transfer occurs 3 years or less,
Okay,
From the last single.
Yep.
So very similar to a perk test. You have a a defined period of time before you have to re-permit. Here you have a defined period of time before you have to
Just-
retest.
Yeah,
Make it-
so, and then I added, because I think there's been some confusion on, what are they testing for? So in accordance with section 5.5, microbiology, trace metals and miscellaneous. So if you go to 5.5,
Page 11.
you'll see what that includes. I figured that having the trace metals, having the lead is very important in there, so I wanted to make sure that was added. Or kept in there.
So just to confirm, when they're selling the property, they got to test for both microbiologies, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 trace metals, and about 15 miscellaneous?
Yep.
Okay,
And I left the VOCs off there, because if there was no VOCs before, hopefully there's not again, but we could always add it. Typically,
okay.
So say like they house is for sale, and they tested per our regs, and something doesn't meet the requirement. So we don't have anything in this regulation that states that if it doesn't, what happens?
right, so you're talking about like, if we're not issuing a permit, basically what can we do in order to, make sure that the well meets the quality, requirements?
Yeah, so like, we require right now, if a house is for sale, that they have to test the water if it's within this 3-year period. So say like there's a house for sale, it's within the 3-year period, and the well test results come back and they don't meet our standard, what then?
Right. And I mean, that's a good question. That's what I'm trying to, that's what, one of the things I'm kind of dwelling over is like, Title V, the buyer or seller, needs to, fix it within 2 years.
Correct.
Usually the banks come in and say, well, we're not loaning you the money until you fix it right now. So, there should be some sort of notice, identifying that, hey, the well results came back and you need to treat. And then, test again and make sure the treatment is working properly. What kind of authority would we have, to do so? I think we do.
That's what I'm wondering, Tom. I don't want us to go in the weeds. So I guess we'd have to, shore up that authority and to put in our regulation, because in reality, I mean, I'm not sure that we can prevent the conveyance of the property, but I think that if they don't meet one of the criteria that we set, I think that maybe we have a duty to notify, to provide some sort of a acknowledgement, hey, the well analysis and, and it was high on, whatever it was high on,
I know in the past, we've had situations like that. Within the last, I don't know, 10 years or less, we had a house, that the builder couldn't convey because the water quality came back, it was high on salt. And of course, in order to pass our regulations, they put an RO system in, they retested, and then they were able to sell the house. And I thought somewhere along the line, I can remember having maybe a prospective buyer sign off that they acknowledged the water quality wasn't exactly where it needed to be.
That is correct. There was a letter.
Yeah, I can't remember the situation, so I know we've come across those things and that's how they were resolved in the past.
Yeah.
But I can't say that it's spelled out anywhere.
Right. And then like in new construction, it's a lot easier because, you know, it's contingent upon the CO being issued. This is an existing dwelling
Right,
that's selling, and we're requiring it to be tested. So, you know, if within this 3-year period, so and then so all of that occurs and they have it tested like we require, because it's within the 3 years, and it comes back and it doesn't meet the standard, what then?
Is it a buyer beware type of thing?
Well, yeah, in regards to that, I mean, I would look at the requirements that DP has for septic systems, where they're not saying you can't sell the property. You need it tested, and then when the results come back, and if the results show that there's, for example, high concentrations of lead, I mean, that's a danger. You can't have your kids drinking the stuff. There's got I think it is our duty to say, hey, you need a treat for lead. You might need to remove the plumbing and restart over with the new plumbing or something. But you need to do or treat it at the water source. But ultimately, you should show to the board that the water quality meets drinking water standards as we know it today. Yeah.
Right, I don't disagree with you, I'm just curious as to what that looks like. Maybe it might be a question for council, because then the other thing is that, you know, just put it out there, so who is reviewing the water testing?
Right.
Well, the Board of Health, right? We would,
But what's our, what's our,
but we're using state specs.
Yes, it would be.
so it's
under
all the state, we don't have our own specs, so,
Right.
I'm just looking at challenges.
No, I agreed. And now I'm trying to think, I haven't bought a used house, let's say, a resell. But I know there are fire inspections, et cetera. So when you sell an existing home, not new construction, isn't there still some form of an occupancy permit?
Only for, like for the fire department comes in and, and they check the smoke, so there's a
Right.
COC for that. A Title V, if it's a septic system, if it's municipal water, there's nothing. We have a provision in our well regulations that requires it, not all towns do that. But there's no inspection or occupancy. An occupancy is only issued one time when the house is constructed. If you do projects in your house, like you put an addition on, right? That's a certificate of final inspection, because that's new, it's not occupied. There's no changes, you're just selling your house. So what does that, just to complete the requirement, what does that look like? And maybe that's a question for council. And to Tom, your point about, looking at the DEP requirement and the correction for it, like you said, as far as, a septic system, you have 2 years under Title V.
Yeah, I don't think 2 years is appropriate, by the way. I'm just saying.
Right.
That there's gotta be, they were very careful on how they wrote it to make sure they didn't stop the sale of a property. It's like, oh yeah, no, you can sell the property, you just need a Title V inspection, and that may be a failure. It may fail. We're not telling you can't sell the house. They're just saying you need to notify the Board of Health that it fails. And the homeowner should be asking for that report as well. There shouldn't be any surprises.
On the septic side, don't a lot of banks require money put in escrow to guarantee the construction of the new system?
Some do, some won't even fund it unless there's a COC. But it is common for a holdback, yes. So
Yeah,
maybe we just need to have council,
Scan that paragraph.
yeah, comb that out a little bit for us.
Yeah, so I mean, basically we say prior to the transfer of title, it has to be tested, it has to be tested. It doesn't go into the Title V sections on what it constitutes a transfer.
Mhm.
So you would say to Tom that you don't agree with the 3-year, is that what you said?
I don't agree that if you come back with a water analysis that shows the water doesn't meet drinking water standards, I don't agree that they have 3 years to fix it. Or 2 years to fix it. I think they need to fix it like right away.
Okay, we're not saying that.
No,
No,
but I
that's
think we
what they need
should.
to expand on.
Okay.
And then Tom, to your point now, so we're really going in it now. Regarding Title V, yes, there is very specific, what constitutes a conveyance. Is that something we should be incorporating in here as well?
Well, I put it in here and submitted it with a 30-day, within 30 days with a Title V inspection report. So that kind of like backhandedly says, if you're doing a Title V inspection report, you should be doing the well analysis too.
No, but under Title V, they're very specific as to what constitutes a conveyance. If it's between, a family member, if you take back a mortgage, that none of those are considered conveyances.
Yeah,
So
Right.
if we don't address it in our well regulation, then anything is considered a conveyance. Do we want to put that in our well regulations, or do we want to just leave it?
Well, didn't we change that on the septic side? That within families, that we did consider that a conveyance?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
Legal counsel hasn't reviewed it yet.
Okay. Well, we did have,
It's on the radar, yes.
did have-
Yes. No, because we did talk about that, because remember it was something about the property up there,
Yeah,
not to get off the topic, but
right,
it was cash.
yes.
We had to word it, so if cash was involved, it doesn't matter. It's basically, unless it was a surviving spouse, regardless, you had to get this done.
okay. Yes, I remember having the discussion on that. That that was gonna be a change.
Yes.
But I thought it already happened. Okay.
we could point to, the section in Title V, it's in section 15301. That references all the title transfers that require a septic system inspection. The only thing is, there are transfers where, between family members that don't meet that requirement, and perhaps they should have the well tested. Like
Mhm.
if the kids took it over from the trust or whatever.
Well, unless we specifically incorporate that in right now as it stands, any conveyance, this is a requirement for any conveyance. It doesn't matter if it's immediate family, spouse, or anything, so we could just leave that alone. Unless you want to make those exclusions. But if you do, and then there was something bad with the water, then what does that look like?
Right, I'll say, given Tom's view on the 3 years, I almost say that we should maybe modify that locally. Reduce that time frame
Okay, the 3 years they have to repair it.
from the standpoint of if the test shows something's wrong.
No, I think it's getting a little confused. The 3 years is if they're selling the property and they haven't done a well analysis in 3 years, they must do it and submit it to the Board of Health. If they haven't submitted, so if they transfer the property a year later, then they don't have to do the well analysis, because they already done one. Now, if they have a problem with the analysis, if it comes back with high concentrations of primary, secondary standard, then the question is, what do we do? What time do we give them if we are doing something? There's got to be at least some notice provided that, the water does not meet quality standards, and what are you going to do about it? or we could take the more heavy approach saying you must do something prior to, within the next, 6 months or something like that before depending on the conditions.
And at the time, I had an interest in maybe specifically having us define
Right.
a reasonable, if an issue would occur.
Okay, so do we simply add that, if the standards aren't met,
Mhm.
the well needs to be brought into compliance within a 6-month period? And that could be something very simple that they need to do, or it could be something more complicated.
Yeah, depending on the significant risk.
So
Factors.
to that section, why don't we just add, if water quality standards are not met,
Mhm.
the well needs to be brought into compliance within 6 months. Everybody okay with that? Tom Ryder, that makes sense?
And if they don't, what's the enforcement? What's the penalty? Because if you're setting a time frame and they don't comply with it, now, do we have, I should look to see if we have a process in here for non-compliance? Because if we don't, then we should, as if we're giving them a time frame to comply and they don't, we have to have a regulation that allows us to enforce that compliance.
That's a tricky one because it can depend on what is out of spec. It could be something minor that could be a quick, fairly simple fix,
Mhm.
but it could be something that's out of spec that requires something major.
Right, and major would be drilling a new well.
Right.
You know?
But what I'm saying, after that 6-month period, if they have not complied, how do we get them to comply?
Yeah.
So there needs to be some sort of, like we have with tobacco regulations.
Right.
First offense, I'm not saying it's gonna be a first offense, but there needs to be some sort of fine language in here.
Well, we do have, under section 8, we do have penalties.
Okay,
Any person who violates any provision of these regulations or who fails to comply with any order by the board for which a penalty is not otherwise provided in any of the general laws shall upon conviction be fined not less than, not more than, each day failure to comply with the order shall constitute a separate violation. I mean,
yep,
so there is a penalty section. I mean,
then that's fine.
if the only other thing we could do is attach a note to the assessor's notes, like we have in the past.
But then the assessment note doesn't get updated until the beginning of the year.
Okay.
So if nothing happens now,
it'd be a
they're
lag.
not gonna see it until next year.
Okay. Well,
We enforce the tobacco reg, I think, through non-criminal.
Yeah.
So we should have that one.
Yeah.
Criminal language.
I think
Sorry.
also, this goes back to the, okay, now that we know there's a problem with this well that's transferring, the next property owner, the next owner should know too, it should be part of the deed notice. That there is a ABC treatment because of, there's a condition in the water supply.
so is it faster and quicker to attach a note to the deed? And do we have the authority to do so?
Yeah, that may be a question for,
So,
the town council.
I mean, again, we're not trying to hurt the present owner.
oh,
We're trying to protect the new homeowner
and the board.
from getting into, and again, I would say most of the corrections are probably things that well water filtration companies have seen before and know how to remedy. Those rare cases where, you have a well that's next to an old time gas station that has petroleum in it. Those are more the rare ducks.
The, in reference to the penalty section, however, it talks about upon conviction.
Well, isn't that why you brought up non-criminal?
So meaning that in order for these penalties to apply,
Yes.
the person, we're talking about legal action that would have been taken place and a verdict would have been determined.
Right, but if we add non-criminal compliance,
Right,
then we don't have to go to that conviction level.
Correct. Right. And are those amounts suitable? Agreeable with how it's currently languaged, you know?
So this section 3.5 was in section 5 before. But I moved it up to 3.5 because it looked like it was better suited there because it wasn't part of a permit. I think section 5 talks about, well, construction permit requirements. So this is requirements for private wells. So,
Okay, so all in all, if we add that the remedy, they have 6 months to bring into compliance upon, if they have failure, and we need to run it by town council. Is that the decision?
The deed,
Yeah.
yeah, to see if we.
or I'll say 6 months or sooner if determined by the Board of Health. Yeah, so we can put a couple more words in there if the Board of Health like terms it should be sooner, then it should be sooner. Or there might be cases where, hey, this house has been vacant for like 10 years and I'm just trying to get somebody to purchase it, and it may be a year down the road before someone moves in and they have to revamp it. So maybe there's a process that they can go through that makes sense economically and because it's not affecting the health. So, okay. Let me rework that a little bit.
Okay, thank you, Tom. All right, let's move on to section 4.0, well construction or destruction permits.
This is a section 4.1 where it used to be under the DCR. That regulation does not exist anymore. It is now under DEP. And the reason why I left the law on the definitions is because that law still exists. Water Resources Commission's defined in Chapter 620 of the Acts of 1956. Also MGL Chapter 21G, Section 20.
Okay, now, I noticed in our fee schedule, the second page of this packet, that there was no fee for a well destruction permit. Does that make sense?
Well, we're not reviewing anything other than the permit, so I would leave it up to the board to see whether a fee should be imposed.
Okay, I think down the road, we should discuss that. We should go back to that because we do go out there and inspect to make sure that the destruction was completed correctly. Okay, so we'll circle back to that.
And the fee also, whatever, to review a well permit application, Tom's time, admin time should be reflected in that fee.
Okay, so we'll circle back to that. I noticed that that kind of caught my eye. Very good. Let's proceed. Thank you. All right, so everybody good with 4.0? All right, we'll move on to 5.0, well construction permit requirements.
So 512, I just added, Mass PE, land surveyor, registered sanitarian, show the location of the proposed well. So we'll kind of leave that up. I thought it might be easier for us to get at least a plan, that is not, I know in the past, the homeowner would come in and say, this is everything I got. But it needs to be certified as to the location by somebody that has a stamp.
Right, yeah, we would run into situations where we were getting hand-drawn drawings not to scale. And we knew that we needed to address that, especially in the village and around the lake, those tight lots. So thank you for covering that, Tom. All right, so then we go down to 5.2. Again, we're talking about location requirements and having a professional land surveyor with a stamp, providing the information and the distances.
Yeah. Yeah, locations of anything that could cause contamination plume or something, so.
There'd be verbiage in that section related to semi-public.
I was just thinking the same thing, because we were talking about the well and the well being on the same land as the building it serves.
Yep.
So that building could be multi-dwelling if it's a duplex or triplex. And if it's a duplex or triplex, then it's a semi-public. Oh, it does mention that later on. Above requirement are considered semi-public water supplies by permitting processes. So maybe Tom already covered that. Well, that's center line. Maybe not. What do you think, Tom? Do you think what you added at the end there in red, each private water supply system, do you think that covers duplexes and triplexes adequately?
I was specifically adding this so that the conditions where the lotting is, divides, condominium complexes, and you might be pulling from the same lot but different building area. That it's a semi-public water supply. Or there are cases where a property sold and there are two lots adjacent, but one's not buildable, and they have the well that is like next door,
Okay,
and then that
so the
becomes
well would be on the non-buildable lot.
yeah. I
Okay,
think over I want to say off of Taft, I think there is a condition where the well is not on the same lot.
okay.
I'll have to pull that back out again and see how that would be impacted in the future, stuff like that. 'Cause, 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 'cause,
All right, so are we comfortable with 5.2?
Mhm.
All right,
Just like reread it again, see if it makes sense when you get a chance.
okay,
These setbacks are the same that we've had before, no changes. Same thing with construction standards.
yeah.
I think section 10, I think we found from another town's requirements. That might be, if they are, um, I'll have to see where that number 10 came from again. I'm not sure how much sense it's making.
Mhm.
How do we-
I think the idea was to say, that we're not allowing, you to install an injection well for chemicals or something like I'm not sure.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I think we were adding that just to prevent that from being permitted.
Right.
I can't remember the situation that may have come up where an injection well was discussed. But I thought that was just something we wanted to state as not being a permitted purpose.
And at the same time, whatever the discharges should not go to the septic system either, though. Like,
Exactly. I'm gonna put a question mark. Do something.
Yeah, I mean, could we have been talking about, like, well water filtration systems? How this, you're supposed to be putting them
yeah,
in a dry well
Mhm.
versus at a certain distance versus putting them into your septic system. To get rid of the filtered material. So maybe that, like I said, I can't remember the exact, conversation.
Do you even need the second part of that in number 10 if you're prohibiting them anyway?
right, yeah, and so I'm not sure if we would prohibit, like, say, like if it's a water softener unit.
Mhm.
The idea is that they would have to create their own injection dry well. That's not part of the septic system. So I'm not sure we want to prohibit. They just can't be located near the well. I mean, it shouldn't go back into the well either.
So we want to make it, we're saying we want to make it conditional, not really prohibited, but conditional.
Yeah, right. If that's the case. So they have a place to discharge, but not into the septic system.
Correct.
And then, well, there are other categories of injection wells that we wouldn't want. Because that type of well is a self-certifying injection well, whereas like there's other injection wells that require DEP permits. So, all right, I'll have to take a look at, make sure. I don't think this was written correctly.
Okay,
Yes, we just have to maybe broaden that a little bit.
all right, moving
That one.
along.
That one.
Yeah, so that would be 10. All right, moving along, we covered the geothermal well requirements.
Yep.
And we're down to water sampling procedure. making sure that it's collected correctly.
Yeah, I probably could take Title V inspector, but I wanted to, I think the important part is that when this is finished, we need to get the Title V inspectors on board saying, look, you have a Title V inspection to do. Hey, while you're out there, they're gonna need the well tested. So make sure you meet these requirements and submit it. It'll save everybody a lot of time and phone calls won't have to be made. So that's why I included that. Because I think they're a good, it's a good resource to have with the realtors, you know.
Mhm.
What we're saying in this sample is some of the new well. We're using 15 minutes, right, at a runtime.
Or even well, it's new or existing, right?
Yeah,
New or existing.
Right.
Okay.
It's the general procedure that you or I or anyone here would go through to make sure that you're not getting water that's been sitting in the pipe.
But what I'm just wondering is, if we're defining that, what about the homeowner just goes and does their own sample? Versus how are they gonna think to wait 15 to go let it run 15 minutes before they take their sample?
But in the previous section, we're saying representative of a state certified lab, Title V inspector, or person with training in water sampling collection.
So a homeowner themselves couldn't do it.
Unless they meet that criteria.
Okay.
I mean, they could say, hey, and I tested my water, but it doesn't meet our requirement.
Right, okay. So they would have to follow this
Mhm.
process.
yeah, they have to follow the chain of custody, the, you know, yeah, everything. They'd have to know how to do it properly.
So if that's the case, something like that, then probably I think we should be considering some sort of notification once this is all said and done. That probably needs to go out to the base.
Well, and I think that's sort of what Tom Ryder is saying by letting the Title V inspectors that normally get called in to do the septic side,
Right.
letting them know that the well side also needs to be done
Yeah.
and that they have the qualifications to do that at the same time. And by sending this out to, like we've discussed in the past, the local realtors,
Oh, yeah.
the septic, the well drillers that, you know, for the most part drill in this area,
Yeah.
to make sure that everybody is on board with the new regulations.
Yeah. I'm just thinking as part of that
The
communication.
homeowners probably wouldn't get that.
Well, I'm thinking as part of that communication, maybe the homeowner should be included. Not just
Mhm.
the well
We
drillers,
can
not
put it
just,
up on the website and we're gonna do a summary page so
Yeah.
that they can see, you know, what the changes were and we can get that up on the
And Jack, we
website.
do sort of a welcome to Mendon Board of Health thing.
Yeah.
So if we included in that, we would at least catch the new people as they move in
Mhm.
as to what our well requirements are. So I mean, it would probably take time to get everybody.
because this would take, when this is all said and done and approved and passed, it's retro. Right? Applies to everybody. Okay. Not just the new
Right,
people coming into town.
right, but I'm thinking of sort of the process to try to catch everybody.
We could look at, you know, the summary that Tom's gonna prepare and then maybe talk to Ellen about when, I mean, Tracy, or someone when the tax bills go out. Put an insert,
Insert,
you
It'd be a
know,
bad idea.
yeah, maybe do a one page,
I mean, the
both
website's good,
sides.
but
Yeah.
there's a lot of
but
percentage.
just do, I mean, it won't be more than that, you know,
Yeah,
decide
Yeah,
it,
small little,
see about putting it in, you know?
Yeah.
That's a way of getting,
Everybody updated.
or the paper that gets delivered to every
Free
resident.
press, yeah,
We could do something in there.
there's something to keep in the back of our minds.
Yeah.
as we-
yeah. Okay. All right, so we're moving along. We're down to, looks like 5.5, number 3.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that was, this in red was probably someplace in another location, the Mendon Board of Health, has the opportunity to add more analysis requirements.
Over the well analysis at the bottom, well, middle of the page rather.
All right, this is where things get tricky.
Oh, good.
So this case may be that the analysis originally comes back clean. When they drill a well, it comes back clean. Everything meets the requirements. They still need to do a second test at the kitchen or, at the tap, prior to, certificate of completion. So they need to do 2 test rounds. Say, for example, though, it comes back with, concentrations of iron and manganese high in the first round. Well, they have an opportunity to retest for those 2. And it comes back clean, then they're fine. Then they do their second round at the kitchen tap before the certificate of completion. But there's cases where there's no way they'll meet, say, a secondary standard. So their second round, they decide they're just going to put a treatment system in. Then they need to do a second round sample at the kitchen tap to make sure the treatment system's working fine. That is like the intention of the process. So like all those scenarios are eventually they need to do 2 rounds of sampling at least, whether it's a treatment device or not. So, but if the first round comes back that, high concentrations of iron and manganese, there's going to be a requirement that they put on a D notice that this water system treats iron and manganese. So that is the intent of this section here. But I kind of struggled with the wording a little bit. So I want to make sure it makes sense.
I know in one of the previous versions we had, there was a reference to adding PFAS testing, possibly. I know it's pending guidance by DEP, but
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, there was I had a discussion with DEP a while ago, over a year ago, and they said, hold on, there's going to be more guidance coming. Right now, the EPA's guidance is that it's going to go down to 4, and it's a variety of PFAS compounds. And they eventually are going to go to like a 0. The objective is go down to 0. So that's what public water supplies. I don't think they're enforcing the 4 yet. But it's coming very quickly.
is there a need to put any reference into this private well rig regarding
Adding PFAS?
I'm sorry, Tom, I didn't catch that.
You mean adding PFAS to the well analysis requirements?
Well, just that, should we have something general? I know PFAS isn't specifically defined as being worked on, but should there be a general reference? Or do we just leave it alone until we get definition? It's just so a lot of people are aware of it.
Yeah, I think we need to figure where to put this because questions are going to come up about it because it is really a hot topic.
Right.
And now I'm hearing a lot more concentrations of perchlorate plumes that I was not aware of. So is that something we want to explore as well?
And I shouldn't, not to minimize PFAS, I shouldn't have said buzzword. To rule it out, I mean, just to fluff it off, it's a very important element that a lot of people
It's gonna be a very hot topic coming soon.
are concerned about. You know, it's a viable, viable discussion. I didn't mean to make it sound.
No, and I don't think you did minimize it, because just like our ADU, it's new, it's evolving.
Yeah.
And no one has really made the commitment to give any decisive requirements on it.
Yeah.
You know, so like everything else, you kind of stay tuned.
Yeah.
And wait and see, what comes down the pike. And hopefully we don't run into a situation in the meantime that we have to try to figure out with no guidance from the state or from the feds. So I didn't take that as you were minimizing it all.
I didn't want to make it sound.
Everything's up. I mean, we're all discussing and
Yeah, it's really, it's because it's more than a buzzword. It is a viable concern.
Right, and we've had people with concerns come before us already.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
So, it's something in process. All right, so looks like we're the water quality 5.6. Just really repeating the process. And defining sodium content. Now,
So sodium
On the-
content.
yeah, on the sodium content, were our requirements stricter than the state? I remember we've had a couple situations come before
Yeah.
us.
So there's the MCL for the primary conditions for VOCs and metals and things like that. Then the secondary standards, which involve like concentrations of iron and manganese, for example. Sodium is on a level called guidance, which is not really it's kind of tough to enforce. There are concerns with high concentrations of sodium, especially because it could do a number on the utilities. Or the other issue is the concentrations may be high enough that if someone on a low sodium diet,
Right.
Has an issue with having too much sodium. So so as far as how to handle that, I think we put it in that it needs to be a D notice that there is a concentrations of sodium that exceeds the guidance level.
And I think that's what we've done in the past. I can remember a letter that we used to notify the homeowner, and I believe they may have had a sign off on it.
Yep.
With the transfer.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Yep.
I can't remember the address of the general location.
Yeah, I do recall. Yeah, I recall that too. Yep.
Yeah, but I do remember maybe the transfer of a new property where we got some pushback from the builder on the salt level as to whether or not, again, I guess it goes back to what you say, it's a guidance level versus a pass or fail. So I can remember getting some pushback from a builder on that issue.
Yeah. And I just quickly looked up the EPA concentrations. They suggest not to exceed 30 to 60 milligrams per liter.
Okay. And actually, all we're saying is it shall be reported to the homeowner. So that would, in effect, that letter and that letter being signed, that the new owner of the property, whether it be new or existing property, acknowledges that the guidance level of sodium is being affected.
And in number 2, Tom, is that lab location still accurate?
Well, Lawrence, Mass.
Yeah, it references in number 2, the DEP lab certification office in Lawrence.
I'm
Still
checking right now.
Make sure we're referencing
Oh,
the
you're right, they do move.
things change. Things change.
You're right. You're right. We've
You
seen.
just take out Lawrence and the DEP lab.
Yeah.
Certification.
Be more
office,
general,
leave
yeah.
it alone,
Yeah, there you go.
you know?
That way we
Way to
can't be, giving someone
That
bad
when they
info.
keep moving, we don't have to worry
Yeah,
about
why don't we do that? Why don't we just take the, that out?
Period, you know?
Yep.
Because it would be revised in our regulations every time they move that office, if we specified, you know.
If they tell us they moved.
Right.
Yeah, we'll just strike that location. All right, so it looks as though we're, moving on to the top of page 13. Instructions for destroying a hazardous well.
Oh, in number 7 there at the top,
Mm-hmm.
in the event the board determines that a well constitutes a health hazard.
So that would be a well that can't, the water quality can't be corrected. For one reason or the other, could be contamination from a gas station, oil spill of some kind. And it actually could be a well that was a dug well,
Mhm.
you know, an old dug well that is too close to what was a
Right.
cesspool.
Right.
And now, you know,
Contest shallow well.
You
that
can't fix-
Meet the quantity requirement. You know,
Do we have to kind of spell that out? What we're saying is a health hazard or?
so in other words, a health hazard or what defines a bad well?
Well, I'm saying the verbiage currently reads health hazard,
Mm-hmm.
but do we have to find that anywhere?
well, we just, you know, we cover it in our regulations as far as, first of all, if it had any type of bacteria in it, you know, then it wouldn't meet our standard. You know,
We're basically just be going to the results of testing.
yeah,
Well, the results of testing, and it would be all the setback requirements.
quantity, if the quantity wasn't there.
Would that fall under health hazard though?
Yeah, the quantity's not there to serve the household. It's not like it's an old house that was abandoned, like Tom had said before, hasn't been occupied for 10 years. It had, you know, it had a shallow well in it. Now a contractor buys it, wants to rehab it. Okay, test the water, test the well, the quantity doesn't meet the quantity. They're digging a new well. We can easily say that that's a health hazard. Because you have to have potable water, that well could go dry.
Okay. Playing devil's advocate.
Oh, no, and that's exactly what Tom Reiner brought up at the beginning of this discussion, is talking about the different scenarios that could come up to make sure that we can cover them today.
Yeah, my neighbor, he had a shallow well and every summer. And it went dry and he would draw off of my spigot.
Yeah. I know a situation of a house over on Taft Ave that same thing would happen. The well would run dry.
Yeah.
All right, so moving along, we're in the middle of that page. 13.
Added sections 3 and 4, notification of the water quality treatment.
Yeah, that covers the back flush, not allowed into the septic system.
And the D notice if required, water quality system required.
Down, we cover geothermal again. And hydrofracking. Do we know if we have any geothermal wells in town?
I've seen come through for purpose.
I know it was one part of that, energy efficiency program, but I don't know of anybody that, are there? Okay.
With that wording, is there something that should go after that? Is that starting a new sentence, or is that being added to the words before? Is that how that's?
Come on, Ryder.
It was that,
5.9, the last two, geothermal hydrofracking, is that just gonna be continuing on, or?
Is there supposed to be something more explanatory behind that, Tom?
I took-
To be a comma, geothermal and hydro.
yeah, I'm gonna have to open up my previous.
Yeah, I took it as those were examples of, alterations, modification.
An example.
Okay,
Yeah, comma, geothermal.
got it. Pump failure, geothermal, or hydrofracking.
Right.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay.
I'll say an example.
All right, so we're moving on to page 14. At the top. Issuance of a private well certificate.
I noticed I left the Division of Water Resources, CMR 313, that needs to be fixed.
Okay. Stating that receipt and review of the documents. Board will give a final decision and issue the private well certificate. Page 15 at the top. Variances to applications. Yeah, just went through this for 50 Uxbridge Road.
Yeah, so I added similar requirements for variance of the Title V as to add notifications to butters. I think the importance, previously, we didn't have a public hearing process. And perhaps this is still not a public hearing, but it should be an invite at least to, to the board. The board can listen to an abutter if they want to or not. A public hearing process, you have to listen to them. You just don't have to act on it. But it may be just an invitational, only. And that the important thing is, like, if someone decides they're going to drill a well, like, just so that their neighbor will be out of compliance with their septic system, could be a real thing. Not that they would do it intentionally, but maybe they would. But perhaps they don't know of the septic system that's nearby. That the engineer should have located anyways. But perhaps they don't have any other options to do so. And this might be the kind of the foundation of the basically something being manifestly unjust is their location to put the well. And I think years ago we did have a well that had to be located closer to a neighbor's septic system, less than 100 feet away. And the neighbor was invited and was upset about it. But when everyone looked at, the size of the lot and the requirements of, where they could put it, that was the furthest way that well could be from all septic systems. But the person who wasn't really affected by it, other than the well being closer to their septic system, was really had a lot of problems with it. But eventually, everything was calmed down. But I think it's a good practice to have have that process in there.
No, absolutely. And the board is always willing to listen to neighbors, abutters, anybody that's concerned about a property in town and take it under consideration. All right, so it looks like we've gone through it. We just have those couple of questions or modifications. So I think we made great progress. Just going back through real quick. Section 3.0, where it talks about semi-public water supplies. We need to clean that up a little bit and consider whether or not we need to add anything referring to ADUs at this time. Section 3.5, we talked about a 6-month period to bring the well into compliance, Tom Fickner, and something about town council maybe putting their eyes on it to make sure that we have the ability to enforce it. Then we kind of cruise through. We talked again, top of page 10, the construction of injection wells, just to make sure that we're on the same page there, about maybe making that conditional versus prohibited. And we move along. We talked about the sodium content being a guidance level. We talked about striking the location of the DEP lab, Lawrence, Mass. We're going to strike that. And then we moved along, and that looks like it. So
into the penalty section.
Okay, I'm sorry. What section was that again?
8,
Eight.
right?
Yeah, we talked about that. That's right. Okay, so I'm sorry. Section 8, we talked about, non-criminal. So that we could act on it on our level versus having a conviction, first. So I think we've made great progress tonight. Thank you very much, Tom Ryder, and thank you, board members. Maybe one more meeting, we should be able to have this, cleaned up and, in a final form.
Yep, I think so. All right. So yeah, Jack, I'll give you a call, and then we'll just go over it one more time with the notes.
Yep,
We're gonna
Okay.
talk tomorrow, Tom, at 10 about the other,
Yep.
about the,
Yes, yep,
so we can
Mhm.
talk then.
okay.
All right, anybody have anything else to add before we let Tom Ryder go?
Oh, I'm good.
All right, Tom Ryder, thank you very much for all your work on this. I'm glad to see that we're gonna, get this finalized in the very near future.
All right,
Thanks,
Right.
Tom.
Thank
Yeah.
thank
you.
you, Tom.
Good night.
good night.
Great work, everyone. All right, we'll move on to agenda item 5, topics not anticipated within 48 hours.
No,
None.
Be on Uxbridge Road. Dumpster overflowing. Any,
Oh, I
Remedy?
talked to,
whether it's larger dumpster, picked up more frequently, this is an anomaly.
I think that, it was, maybe due to the holidays, and then I went by a second time, there were 2 bags the second time on the ground.
Right, and they weren't ripped open.
Yeah, no, they were, and there was cardboard box on the left-hand side. So I'll take a ride there tomorrow and see what it looks like.
Okay,
Actually, I'm gonna take that back and I'll take a ride there on after the weekend. and see what it's like.
Tuesdays is good day.
Yeah, I'll go there Monday.
okay.
But
And,
I did talk to him and he is going to monitor it as well.
Okay. yeah, like I said, I mean, I don't think it was something noticed or complained about in the past. So I didn't know, like I said, if it was an anomaly or they needed to enlarge the dumpster or change the frequency of pickups. Didn't seem like it was a major problem. I think that's it for me. Good and welfare for the board. That next meeting,
Next meeting is February 12th.
6 o'clock.
6 P.M.
Good. Nobody has anything else. We'll have a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll step down in second. All in favor?
Tom, aye.
Al and I. Good evening and thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.